Good evening. I apologize that we're starting a little bit late with the Friday symposium. Today is February 14th, Valentine's Day, and I hope that the world will move very much in the direction of love of mankind. Uh, we will be speaking tonight about BlackRock and its war against the nation state with Rich Freeman from the EIR Economics desk. But before we get to that, obviously, the election of President Donald Trump and his first actions have thrown the world into quite a turmoil, especially now that he has had his first hour and a half conversation with President Putin of Russia. And I have to say, you realize how screwed up the world is when European leaders, rather than saying, thank God they're talking, the danger of nuclear war may be off the table, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has taken something like 1.2 million lives, primarily at least over 700, 800,000 to a million Ukrainians, contrary to the Western press, that this could be ended and that nations bordering the conflict in Western Europe, who would be the first targets in a major conflagration, would breathe a sigh of relief. But instead, they are screaming that Trump has abandoned them. How dare he do this? Why can't they be involved in the negotiations? There's a huge freak out, and Vice President J.D. Vance delivered a speech at the Munich Security Conference. I guess it was this afternoon there. We got it this morning here, which was really quite something, where he took on the question of quote unquote democracy. He said, oh, well, we have this alliance to defend something. Defend what? What are we defending? What is the shared European transatlantic value? He said democracy. Well, you just had the Romanian elections overturned. You had someone arrested in the UK for silent prayer outside an abortion clinic, and he gave various other examples of, so he talked about Europe, where Friedrich Merz, who is the said to be the front-running candidate, and we're going to get to him in a bit, but who formerly was one of the leaders of BlackRock in Europe, he is threatening Elon Musk with legal action for meeting with the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland. And Vance said, why do you exclude voices? Why is your so-called democracy so fragile that you can't even allow people with whom you may disagree to speak? So Merz is threatening legal action against Elon Musk. My favorite part of the speech was when Vance said, look, if the United States could withstand 5 years of Greta Thunberg waving her finger at us, then surely Europe is strong enough to withstand 4 months of Elon Musk, which I thought was quite funny and to the point. So this is very, very promising. Lavrov made comments to the effect that finally we have two adults speaking, that is Putin and Trump. There had been virtually no contact between the Biden administration and Russia, two nuclear superpowers, for nearly 2 years, if you can imagine that, the danger, the insanity, the arrogance. So that's very promising, as are some of the shakeups and cleanouts and cutting of funding to all kinds of horrible programs. We have also the very alarming and gut-wrenching situation with Gaza, or Israel, Palestine, where there was a ceasefire that Trump was in the middle of negotiating, and hostage and prisoner release. But meanwhile, the Israelis seem to be able to do whatever they want in the West Bank. And then President Trump made this very shocking and frankly delusional proposal at his press conference with Bibi Netanyahu that the U.S. was going to, quote unquote, own Gaza. and that the Palestinians were going to all be relocated somewhere else, which is simply not going to happen. None of the surrounding Arab nations have agreed to receive them. They think the Palestinian people deserve to stay on the land where they were born, where their families have lived for generations. And the Palestinian people have withstood 15 months of genocidal policies from the Israelis, and they don't intend to leave. But what President Trump, Secretary Rubio, and National Security Advisor Colonel Mike Waltz all have said, well, this is our plan, but if you have a better plan, put it forward. So I have written to the National Security Advisor in my capacity as president of the LaRouche organization regarding LaRouche's Oasis plan and Eisenhower's initiative with Admiral Strauss, who had been one of the founders of the Atomic Energy Commission, called A Proposal for Our Time, both of which address the main point of crisis in the region, which is actually water. And that should be circulated everywhere, the Oasis Plan. I can also report that there was a meeting of the International Peace Coalition today, convened by Helga Tsepp-LaRouche, and the former Minister of International Relations and Cooperation from South Africa, Dr. Naledi Pandor, was the featured speaker along with Helga. And she actually said, look, we need a place. I think the Schiller Institute and this forum, the International Peace Coalition, can be that forum where we can bring all sides together for a dialogue where we have adults in the room that can come up with a solution to this horrible situation. I think that's a very big challenge. It is a great expression of confidence and trust in the work of the LaRouche movement, and we will be taking that up. So we're in a completely wild time, and it's my view that the LaRouche organization has to do everything possible to educate particularly the American people on the pitfalls to be avoided of policy and a forward-looking mission, and to take the opportunity where everything is sort of up for grabs in a state of flux. Maybe thousands of FBI and CIA agents are all going to quit. That would be nice. We'll have an opportunity to get some things done that we couldn't do otherwise. And since you have a similar revolutionary foment going on in Europe, and since we seem to have BlackRock trying to get its hands on everything that's not nailed down or everything that is nailed down, we thought it was appropriate, given that the German elections are coming up, 9 days away, to talk about BlackRock and what they're doing. And let me just say, finally, before Rich comes in 2019, Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England, Canadian, who is supposedly a contender to become the new Prime Minister of Canada, which would be one reason for taking over Canada. Just kidding. But if Mark Carney, what did he say at this meeting in Jackson Hole? He said, look, we need regime change. We can't have pesky elected governments getting in the way of the policies of the central banks. We need the bankers to decide policy. And if you look at what BlackRock is and what they own and what they're doing, I think you'll see that there is an intention to move it exactly in that direction, which now there is some determination to defeat. So that all being said, Rich, I'm glad to have you here. Welcome, and please tell us some of what we need to know.
Okay, I'm always very happy to be here. This will be on BlackRock, and I think the point one could make is, as the title of the show says, it's the trying to destroy nation states. It's actually trying to, and that's true. It's trying to destroy sovereign credit systems. It's trying to destroy Ukraine and Germany, and it's trying to destroy mankind. And we have a role to play by initially exposing this, but taking actions, because just as people would be very happy to know that the war in Ukraine, the NATO proxy war there, might come to an end on decent terms and change relations between the United States and Russia, BlackRock will be gnashing its teeth because it's not a company in any real sense of the word. It's an instrumentality of the City of London and Wall Street for carrying out dirty operations and destroying things, as we'll see. So what I'd like to do is say that we will cover the fact that it is one of the leading institutions for what we call the military industrial financial complex, and which we'll demonstrate. And we're going to do this in an abbreviated fashion, but I'll give references to EIR where people can read further on these issues. It is simultaneously the largest Bitcoin owner in the world, which it's propelled itself to do within the last 12 months. It is the leading force for the, quote, reconstruction of Ukraine. And very importantly, as Diane cited, it is trying to take over Germany. And if we could have the first slide, this is Friedrich Merz, and he is the Christian Democratic Union Party. He's the candidate for the Chancellor of Germany. There will be elections on the 23rd for the Bundestag. I think it's 630 members, and the leading parties will then be assigned proportions. And there won't be a majority, one party that takes all the seats, but he is slated as the leader. But what is critical is that he's the chairman of the supervisory board, was of BlackRock Asset Management Deutschland AG from 2016 to 2020. And what he did there, which we're going to see, sets that what he will do to Germany is a destruction of the government, takedown of social services, cutting here, cutting there, and an open Schachtian policy, which will destroy one of the most important nation states in the world, or at least make an attempt to do so. So with that said, I would like to first say who BlackRock is very briefly, and then go from there. So the next slide, please, will show Larry Fink. And Larry Fink is the chairman of BlackRock, and one of the founders of BlackRock. He was a person who was involved in setting up the mortgage-based securities when he was working with First Boston and so forth. So he has a long history of just dirty operations, speculation, and so forth against the economies of the world. Next, please. Now, these are three chairmen. These are three central bankers, central bankers that are members of BlackRock. Most companies in the world would never have, if they had one central banker, they would consider it an accomplishment. This is three. The first person you see is Philip Hildebrand, who's the vice chairman of BlackRock. He was the head of the Swiss National Bank, which has a long history, dirty money, offshore money, things of that sort. The second person is Dr. Stanley Fischer. He was the head of the Israeli Central Bank. And then after a stint as that, he became the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve. And the third person is Jean, I think it would be pronounced Boivin, maybe Boivin, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. And he's the head of BlackRock Investment Institute, and he was a leading officer of the Central Bank of Canada. Now, Diane mentioned what happened at Jackson Hole. This is in 2019. These three people, if you want to call them that, went there with a proposal. They did the latest proposal for which that was presented. And the proposal called dealing with the next downturn from unconventional monetary policy to unprecedented policy coordination, which this was held August 22nd to 24th, 2019 at a place called Jackson Hole, which is where many central bankers, treasury officials, and top bankers of the world congregate for 3 to 4 days. And the proposal, which I will just state in summary form, was, well, we're going into a situation where we can't keep using stimulation through the federal government. So that type of stimulation will not work. We can't print more money as we did in 2020 to 21, 22. That could run into problems. So what was their proposal? Their proposal was that you set up something called an emergency standing emergency fiscal facility. And they said that it's a facility in the budget that would make decisions to bail out the financial instruments which would be collapsing. And the US government would not be controlling this. This would be the central bankers, these three people and others, who would run the United States government the next time the blowout occurs. So that's one feature of BlackRock. Next, please. This is an article which I just refer people to. It covers more of what I've just reported and much more about the origins and the functioning of BlackRock and State Street. It was in the January 12th, 2024 EIR, and you can review this and pick it up and look to that. Now, what we exposed about BlackRock is its role as a continuous sponsoring of wars, that we pay taxpayers money, different people around the world pay taxpayers money, and what this has done is it goes into the undergirding the war industry that is at hand for endless, illegal, destructive wars, killing hundreds of thousands of people, and setting the world at edge of nuclear annihilation. Next, please. Okay, so this is something we put out, and I'll show you where you can find this. It was a fact sheet that we circulated immediately on Congress when we knew that the war situation and it was very, very dangerous. This shows the leading companies of the defense companies: Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, General Dynamics, L3Harris Technologies, General Electric, and BAE Systems, which is the premier British defense system. And look where BlackRock is. Lockheed Martin, it's the number 2 owned shareholder. And what happens is there's 1,300 investment vehicles, electronic fund operations, management things that 35 million people invested into BlackRock, which gives BlackRock this pools of money, which on the City of London, Wall Street, can not only invest, but infuse into the military, industrial, financial complex policies coming from the top. So they're the number 2 stockholder, with 9% of Lockheed Martin. If you go down to the second largest shareholder of Boeing, the largest shareholder of L3Harris Technologies, people may not be familiar with it, very important in this military industrial complex, and is the number 2 shareholder in this BAE Systems. So, and then you'll see Vanguard, State Street, and Capital Group. They permeate all throughout this thing. Now, next, please. This is where we say that they're addicted to blood money from wars. They don't want the Russian conflict with the Ukraine conflict, which was an orchestrated conflict, put to rest. And they will do as much as they can to even arm Europe for what they intend to be next phase. We can hopefully shut that down, but that's not the way they're thinking. So you'll see this is just the military sales of these companies. I think this was for 2023, and the percent of their sales that is military. So for Lockheed Martin, it's 96% of all their sales. There's almost nothing else they do but this military. And remember, BlackRock is the number 2 shareholder. Raytheon, you can see the percent. Northrop Grumman, 89%. BAE Systems, 96%. So that the military revenue of these companies, which is then passed through BlackRock into Wall Street, City of London, and elsewhere, 214 billion in revenues. 73%, that is 3/4 of it, comes from the war machine. You want to know who runs the war machine, and you want to know where we're going to do to stop it? Take on BlackRock. Next, please. You can find this fact sheet, which we produced. It was in the January 5th, 2024. And on the flip side of this fact sheet, it's called "The Military Financial Complex is Bloated on Blood Money from Wars." We did a research team that did this. On the back, it shows where some of the funds, if you invested it, could go, including building a 42,000-mile rail system, helping build Nawapa, and so forth. I recommend people look for this in the EIR and study it. Thank you. Next. Now, Bitcoin. It turns out that BlackRock, which had very little Bitcoin And I want to say something about what cryptocurrency is, because people have a funny idea of what it is and what it's so forth. It's just an investment vehicle. It's not. That's far from the truth. So this is something in Bitcoin IRA, and it's called BlackRock becomes the largest institutional Bitcoin holder, September 14th, 2024. Next, please. I just want to put the quote that they have in the article. So BlackRock, this is from that article, has solidified its position as the largest institutional holder of Bitcoin, making a pivotal shift in the cryptocurrency landscape and setting the stage for increased institutional adoption. The development signifies a profound integration of Bitcoin into traditional financial systems. What does that mean? They want to take over and destroy the sovereign credit systems of the United States and the monetary and the currency systems as well. They go together. And other countries of the world. And this is what they're using the funds that they're agglomerating to try to do. Now, I want to say something about the Bitcoin, because what it really is. And I'll do this as briefly as possible. Bitcoin is based on what they call a mathematical formula puzzle. It's not a puzzle that engages your mind in anything intelligent. Upon which it allows, if you solve the puzzles, it allows a company that mines Bitcoin, and a miner is, in short, a company that employs a lot of computers to solve the puzzle. There's nothing physical. There's no mine. There's no coin, and so forth. So if they mine and solve this correctly, they will receive a new issue of Bitcoin. Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency has no value. It's worth nothing. It's an agreement. I don't know Bitcoin itself when it was first founded. One of my colleagues asked me about that. So I'll say this about cryptocurrencies. What happens is Bankman-Fried, when we had a crisis 2 years ago on one of the companies, this is how they got formed. You reach an agreement by a company that says, I'm going to issue Bitcoin or plain coin or simple coin and so forth, and a trading platform. Usually the company that's setting up the Bitcoin owns part of the trading platform. And then they reach an agreement for an artificially set arbitrary price, which they then bring to market. It's like you and I sitting together and saying, why don't we do this? Yes, we'll do it. There is no coin. It's an electronic computer entry, which is absurd. The BlackRock's and financial sharks bid the cryptocurrency's price upward. The value of a single Bitcoin now is $95,970. It has no value in terms of the productive physical economy, in terms of potential relative population density, as the conception of Lyndon LaRouche. There are now 10,000 to 20,000 separate cryptocurrencies in existence, depending on which source you use for who's creating the cryptos. And you can go to the internet, you can do it right after you finish listening to this, and there are videos and manuals on how you can set up your own actually worthless Bitcoin company. But it gives you all the ways to do it and so forth. What's important here is that this is a Nietzschean bent that's being introduced into the economy, but also the minds of people. It does two things. It destroys the sovereignty of nations to issue their own currency under their own control for productive purposes, Hamilton would say. Instead, these 10 to 20,000 cryptocurrencies are under the control of speculators such as BlackRock, which will wreak havoc. What they're trying to do is to get legitimacy for these coins as an alternative mechanism alongside the dollar. Now, the dollar has real problems right now because of the physical economy of the United States. But it was created under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution that enables Congress, the U.S. Congress, to create coins, mint coin money. And that's the basis of the dollar. And its value, therefore, we don't need 20,000 U.S. dollars. What is interesting is that some of the people who consider themselves patriots and sovereigntists and want to defend their country are, including some of the Trump administration, are big endorsers and buyers of Bitcoin, which their limited understanding and greed prevents them from seeing will undermine the very sovereignty of the country, because that's why these cryptocurrencies exist. The other thing you should know about crypto, it's part of it's used in the drug trade, the weapons trade, the black markets trade. It's like Shanghai and Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, the world coordinator of a cyber Venetian predatory slime mold. This is what we are seeing with the BlackRock. Next, please. Third, this BlackRock has positioned itself to be for the reconstruction of Ukraine. This is from a publication called Quartz. It's from March 14th, 2024. BlackRock and JP Morgan are backing a $15 billion investment fund to rebuild Ukraine. It will cost almost $500 billion to reconstruct Ukraine. Now, the price that it will take to or the amount of money that it would take to reconstruct Ukraine, that's true. What's behind this? Again, all of this is very brief, but just to give you a sense of this, what Ukraine's going to need
Rich.
tremendous amounts of,
Richard, just try to speak towards the computer when you talk off to the side. We can't hear what you're saying.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Have I been heard most of the time?
Yes.
Okay. So let me mention one other thing that'll give you a sense of this. And on January 23rd, 2024, in a publication called City UK, which represents the City of London, City UK. The title is UK and Ukraine Forge Closer Ties to Revitalize Economy and Investment Attraction Through New Financial Initiatives. What are their initiatives? And you'll see how this connects to BlackRock. What it says is that the City of UK, which is the City of London, and the London Stock Exchange have signed a landmark memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine to support the development of the Ukrainian financial and related professional services industry through the City Ukraine Hub. Now, the hub is a mechanism for how the British intend to drain Ukraine. And BlackRock has gotten into it. This could change dramatically because of what is unfolding at very rapid speed, for which the LaRouche organization and Helga Zepp LaRouche have set a change in the relations between the United States and Russia. But if there is a sort of, we've ended the war, let's turn aside and let Ukraine do whatever Ukraine is going to do, it means BlackRock and the City of London, directly the City of London, will be in there. And while they may build some necessary things like train stations and other things which will be there, what they will do is continue the looting of Ukraine, which went on under the International Monetary Fund from the year 1993, when Ukraine became independent of the Soviet Union, until 2012, when Yanukovych came in to begin to give a different, 2011 really came in, to give a different direction for physical development of Ukraine. Ukraine shrank. It lost people. And if this is instituted, and I'm not saying I know for sure that it will be, because the change in situation we're on the precipice of not only something that's dangerous, but also of a total change towards ending 500 years of colonialism and development of BRICS. But if Ukraine goes in there, then BlackRock goes in there, then they will become part of this. They'll be destroyed further. There won't be any reconstruction. Which Ukraine deserves. Ukraine was exploited, and the Ukrainian people are real people, and they should be developed. Next, please. So that's the third issue. Now we'll come back to Merz. And I will say a few things that Helga Zepp-LaRouche has communicated in the discussion we had. Germany is being destroyed. I will just cite a couple of reasons why it is being destroyed. We've covered this, and I'll give a citation that you'll see for people to read further on this. But when in 2 days before the February 24th, 2022, where the Russians had their special military operation, the Germans canceled the second Nord Stream pipeline system, a whole system. They just canceled it. And then pushed for the ending, along with others in Europe, led by Britain, to end the importation of Russian gas and oil. And there's an article that appeared in the Financial Times that said at the time, Germany was dependent for 60% upon oil and natural gas. And a huge amount came from Russia at preferred prices. So that was the first thing that began to destroy Germany. And then in September of 2023, when the Nord Stream was blown up, and Seymour Hersh pointed out that this involved intelligence forces in the United States, and we suspect in Britain as well. But he gave some evidence and so forth. And you think Germany would have jumped to say, let's document this. We're going to hold a hearing in the parliament and look into it. Didn't happen. And Schultz stood at a press conference with President Biden. And after Biden said that, had originally said that we were going to find ways to derail, one way or another, he said, derail Nord Stream 2. After it was blown up, Schultz stood there like a puppy. Just we'll go along with whatever the United States is doing, which was terrible. But then you had two other things. You had the development of the green policy, which was to shut down in 2023 the 3 remaining of the 11 nuclear plants in Germany, which were excellent plants. They were built by Siemens, and Germany was one of the developers of nuclear power, as everyone knows. It was part of their heritage, of their scientific tradition. So that was shut down, and to shift to so-called renewables, solar and wind. I won't go into it here. We've discussed it several times on Diane's show, and with people who are experts in the field and so forth. So what happened as a result of the confluence of those two operations and Germany's decision that it was going to, under the SPD, Olaf Scholz chancellorship, and others, completely supported by Merz. Next, please. Okay. What I'm going to show you is what happened, and this will be the concluding part. But what did he do when he was the head of BlackRock Asset Management Deutschland AG? Now, this, what you see on the left-hand side, is their annual best execution disclosure. So it's what they do. It's a 23-page document issued in April 2023. I don't think it was much different than when Merz was there. So let's see. The next page is the first page after that. It's the contents. So look at what their qualitative analysis is going to do. Equity shares, equity derivatives, credit derivatives, securitized derivatives. That's what he did. He was also an advisor and on the board of Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, and an advisor to AXA, AXA, which is a big French investment insurance company, which is very dirty, very nasty. So that's his background. Next, please. And you can find out more about what I'm about to show you briefly, the decline of the German economy. There was an article, Dramatic Decline in German Economy 2024 by Rainer Appel and Claudio Celani, which was also assisted by Marsha Mary Baker. And you can find it in the July 26, 2023 EIR. So I just give you these references so that people want to get more background, because we're trying to do just attack the pithy parts of it. Next. So let me show you what happened as a result of the energy policy. This is the cost of wholesale electricity in 2024. For the United States, it's $38 per megawatt hour, million of hours, megawatt, which is not a great situation. It used to be much lower, but we've had things that are going on in the United States. For Germany, it's $84 per megawatt hour. I've tried to get the best statistics I could, so they may be off a little bit, but that's the realm of it. So it's 2.25 times more expensive. And it is hitting industry, it is hitting homeowners, it is hitting everyone, that if you have double what the Americans pay, what it will do to cripple your economy. Next. This is just one thing I was able to get. It's German industrial production comparing 2024 to 2023. So overall, the German industrial production contracted by 4.5%. This is from the Statistisches Bundesamt, which is the federal statistical office. Automotive industry collapsed by 7.2%. Machinery and equipment, 8.1%. Fabricated metals, 6.4%. Electrical equipment, 14.6%. This is not just a slight downturn. This is an ongoing collapse. And the question is, can it be staunched and stopped and reversed? And there is a way. Or will, if Merz is elected, this be turned into the sabotage of the most important economy in Europe and a tremendous economy for contributing to what could be done to rebuild the world? They've also lost, in just 4 years, 600,000 plus manufacturing workers, which is 9.5% of all manufacturing workers. Next, please. Now, this is very interesting. Merz endorses Friedrich von Hayek, and he posted to X March 8th, 2024, this statement. It was in German. I put it through a machine translation, so it may not be exact, but I checked over some of the words, and it seems to be, as best as my German is, which is very limited, to be fairly accurate. So what he said is, Hayek writes, this is Merz, if the state sets in motion an excessive bureaucracy, it loses its prosperity and also its freedom. What we are experiencing in Berlin with hashtag SPD and hashtag Greens is the opposite of what makes freedom and innovation possible. It is the path to bondage. Now, these words, quote, freedom, bondage. This is on Hayek's piece on serfdom and slavery, a piece that he wrote, which he ends by calling for, actually, well, I won't go into it. Von Hayek's policy, if applied, will take out the rest of German functioning industry. And Helga mentioned to me that, and I'll say how, and then we'll conclude with this. She mentioned to me that on February 9th, when Olaf Scholz and Friedrich Merz debated, Merz said, well, I want to increase the defense percentage of the German budget from 2 to 3%. And Scholz is one of the few sane things he said. So, well, where are you going to get the money from? Now, if you know that von Hayek was the advisor to Margaret Thatcher, when she took a hatchet and cut the budget, because the von Hayek and Lockean conception, which is also the conception of certain libertarians, is you have police, you have military, and you have almost no other function for a sovereign government, which is completely opposite of the United States and the General Welfare Clause. And this will lead to a Schachtian policy as they build up their defense and cut people who are already being dumped out of the labor force. And this will be a danger to everything that Germany represents, but it will be a danger to the whole world. Now, Helga says she doesn't know what's going to happen. She does think, unfortunately, that Merz may win, but it looks like the CDU, Christian Democrats, may get 30 or 32%. She reported to me that there was a meeting at the apartment of a Herr Laschet, who's former CDU top person, where they met with the Greens. And so there could be a CDU Green alliance. But Helga wasn't sure, because she said also it may be that they can't form a government. That's certainly what's been happening in France. So we will watch this. But if one way or another Merz comes to power, we're going to see, in addition to his own outlook, the outlook of who? Of BlackRock, taking apart the fourth largest economy in the world, using Shaktian methods. That's why I say BlackRock is not, I'm not saying it's set in stone. And but that's why I say BlackRock is against all of humanity. And it's not a simple investment firm. It's got tons of money, $11.55 trillion. That's more than the GDP of a large number of countries of the whole world. But it's done for purposes of ultra destruction. Just as I said, it would not be happy that there be peace. Finally, after almost 3 years of war, in a NATO Anglo-American war in Ukraine. Okay, the last part of this. Now, I do want to say that we have a slate that we are running, and it's the Buzo slate, and the slate has on it Helga. It has Stefan Ossenkopf. I'm sorry, I'm not putting my hands on it, but it has Ulrika and Wolfgang Lilga. It has Jonathan Throne, and I apologize, I may be leaving one or two people out. They will be using the next 9 days. They are candidates in Berlin to bring this question before everyone. Because while we're moving perhaps in a direction of an entirely new paradigm, this Merz question is necessary to inoculate and do as much as we can to prevent. Now, the last thing I want to do just to end is this is a list of companies, of machine tool companies in Germany. Germany has excellent machine tool companies. They are among the best. I would say, from what I can tell, the German, Italian machine tools. Chinese are catching up very quickly, but those are really a leap above, in the German and the Swiss too. The Germans are a leap above. If you look at this list, at Kern Microtechnik, DMG Mori, at number 8, Grob Werke, these are excellent. If we can change the whole world and Germany in the process of what we've been talking about, how we're going to change the United States in the pamphlet that we just recently put out, then this can be a contribution to building in Africa, to building in Ibero-America, to building up Europe, to reconstructing Ukraine, and rejuvenating the German economy. And that shift, if we can bring it fast enough, can be very effective. But there's a lot of things that are said about BlackRock. What I've just listed, I think, are the ones that if we can convey them to the people around the world and in the United States, and very importantly, then we have a chance of realizing what is important, of lifting up, ending poverty, and developing every portion of the world.
Very much. Now,
That's it.
I gathered. I have a question to play devil's advocate a little bit. Lyndon LaRouche used to make the point, as he said, Hamilton understood that money has no value. Money has no value. Dollars have no value. Currency has no value. So what's the difference between the no value of a dollar the currency and the no value that you say Bitcoin has, or the no value of cryptocurrency?
Well, Lynn, actually, you're right in terms of the fact that it's a piece, but it actually has value. And Lynn has written things on this, which I can cite or provide to people. The ability of the value of a currency, it's its function in increasing the growth of the physical economy, but even more so by increasing the ratio of free energy to the energy of the system, and thereby establishing a greater increase in the potential relative population density per capita of a society. That's where the value resides. Well, that's one part. As well as if you put a Hamiltonian system, which is extending credit for purposes of rebuilding old infrastructure and building entirely new infrastructure, building scientifically infused capital goods, developing the cognitive powers of man, and doing this over a 25 to 50 year period. A currency issued in the contours of such a system has value. Its value to further the development and elaboration of that process. And to the extent that it does so, it has value. And Lynn, in one paper on what the value of currency, it says it has power. So whereas these have no such intention, they are simply, there's no, unless you call using huge amounts of electricity, and there's article after article how Bitcoins and AI, cryptocurrencies, are just consuming the amounts of entire small and medium-sized cities to do this stuff, to solve stupid puzzles. I can tell you, I mean, what they do is
they're forcing the development of nuclear power. They're forcing us to go back to nuclear. We're not doing it for manufacturing. We're doing it for this. It's really crazy. But go ahead.
But here's the point about that, Diane, and this is very important. It's also the value of a product, because the people throwing out gold, forget gold. It's not, it has a role, but not as, it's not based on the real potential productive value. Man creates a currency not as just, I'll do something, or as a Robinson Crusoe. He does it as a sovereign act, as we did in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, for a purpose. And the purpose is that we love humanity, and it will facilitate that. An agreement between two people, or a trading platform, or 10 people, or 50 people, to do something like this is to undermine that sovereign currency. You have 16 states which have now passed legislation saying that they will allow 10% of their excess budget, which is called the rainy day fund, surplus, to be invested in crypto. And it will then be increased to 25%. Kentucky's one, Arizona, Alabama, Pennsylvania, a lot of states. That's 1/3 of all the states in the nation. And they'll get it up to 25% of that fund, then 50% of the fund. And there was a proposal, which we've covered in EIR, that you will use crypto to prop up the failing $36.5 trillion treasury market, the US Treasury market, that crypto will be used to bail it out, because you can't even, we've exhausted certain measures by which we would use the budget or elsewise. So we'll use crypto. We will be bailing out real institutions, which, if you do, will give it a foothold in the economy, which means anybody could create a currency. And that's the aim. It's a private currency. The people who hate sovereign governments, who hate sovereign credit systems, want to detach us from that and say, well, and of course they give you, it's secure and the government can't intervene, and it cuts the middleman cost out of the picture. It's all a sales talk.
Well, I
this
think
is
it's
very
sort of, it sort of presumes a system in place which it could never have created, right? Because for you to sit there gambling with your cryptocurrency presumes you have electricity, you have a cell phone, you have running water, you have, you have these things which you would not have had there never been a government or a centralized form of credit to make sure that your home did have electricity and that there was a road and you could drive your car somewhere. So it's a very peculiar, it's sort of like solar panels and wind turbines in that sense. It's a system which cannot possibly reproduce itself or create a future because it's inherently entropic. It is not producing anything.
Right. I totally agree. It's not connected to production. It has no, and there's no claim that it would be. It will be used, but they want a foothold so that BlackRock's, the City of London, and so forth, can say, well, therefore, governments don't really have sovereignty. But it goes back to the fight, Diane, since we're talking about the 250th year. Locke had life, liberty, and property. And Hamilton, Margaret Morris, many others fought this tooth and nail because they said, no, we are not for that. We're for the Leibnizian concept of happiness, but Leibniz defined in his letters to a person named Wolf, who was going to the Russian academy, which we were setting up in St. Petersburg. Happiness is mankind's perfection. Happiness is mankind's development. Happiness comes from being concerned and wanting to develop mankind. Whereas the Lockean view, which intersects with the von Hayekian view, which intersects with the libertarian view, is altruism is wrong. I live for feeding myself. I just take in what I need. I just live for that. If other people die, then they die. I'm on this earth only for that purpose. It's the complete opposite of Helga's 10th principle, that we're here to ennoble ourselves and perfect our minds and our ability to actually have love, not the fake love, but love for all of mankind. That's why it was such a fight at the Constitutional Convention. And that's why we established America on that principle of this pursuit of happiness.
Now, BlackRock, you said, is the largest owner of Bitcoin on the planet. I'm just thinking about, how this works, because when you have these kind of games or this becoming quote unquote currency, then you're undermining the ability of a government to actually regulate or encourage economic growth and production, because somehow the center of gravity is moving out of a system which is supposed to be responsive to the people it serves, to a system of completely private interests.
You don't have sovereignty. Sovereignty is the ability to issue credit, to increase, as I said, the ratio of free energy to the energy to the system, to increase potential relative population density. And we can go into a whole discussion of that. But the source of that is the fact that the mind can move from one manifold to another by a higher hypothesis, which sees and overcomes fallacies or things that have not been understood, and that the mind is free to accept that this process will go on. It's not thrown off by that, which is the invariant of that is creativity. That's what powers it. And then you work out to say, how do we support greater population and enjoy the fact that we have greater population, not children are a burden, or I'm just living for myself. I don't, it's that you take it away by introducing 30. Look, before we had the greenbacks, we had, I don't remember the number, but we had about 1,500 currencies in the United States. And we also had it under the Articles of Confederation. And that's why the Articles of Confederation, after the 1783 victory at Yorktown until we established the first government in 1789, was anarchy. And we knew it. The Hamilton knew it. You can't have competing currencies. If you have one sovereign one, and you understand what sovereignty means, sovereignty is not, I'm the strongest guy in the block. I can tell you to do this. I can, Riviera and so forth. It's the ability to service the higher purpose of mankind. And you need sovereignty for that. And you can't have 20 currencies, and certainly not run by BlackRock, City of London, and so forth.
Do you know anything about Larry Fink's background?
So I think, anyway.
Right. What does Larry Fink think he's doing? I mean,
yeah, he's
technology.
Look, for the last, I'd say, 50 years, certainly since Roosevelt's death, because a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now wouldn't have happened had Roosevelt even lived 3 to 4 years, because he was developing a system of the sort that we're talking now for BRICS, but it got completely sabotaged by Winston Churchill in particular. But since the death of Kennedy, people's views have so changed. And the cult of money, the cult of can I make a quick return. You take someone like Fink, who, as I said, he worked for First Boston. First Boston was its old institutional side was they were part of the opium trading families in the 1800s. So this is quite a bank. It's a long time existing bank. It was once a good bank, but then it got taken over that way. And Roosevelt split it up with Glass-Steagall. So you got First Boston and the Bank of Boston, which were separated by Glass-Steagall. But he was just, he was playing with money. Let me say this. The trading and the principles of how you create a cryptocurrency, where you might have a digit 0.000001, then the next one is 0.000011, then the next one is 0.00010011, and you then solve the cold puzzles. But that's what you're doing. It's like what's it called? And Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. That's what, when I started watching about all these videos and reading all these different things on it, it's someone made up some crazy game, but you impute value to it. And I think the mind of people since the Kennedy assassination has been, we play games. More and more of the economy is not productive. Only 21% is productive, 79% is not. Some of it useful services, much of it not. So it's a reflection of the direction of our times. And I really think that this idea of how we're going to solve the migrant question is one of the moral things that will shake up the world if we can get this going. Because it says that America will develop fastest if we build the rest of the world. And we use our credit for something like that. Fink is the complete opposite. He's just one. I wish I could tell you I had some deep insight into him, but I don't. He's just one of about, I would say 20 million, maybe 40 million people who work in real estate, finance, and things like that, insurance. That's what they've turned this into. And they're the dominant force, unfortunately, at least for that side of policymaking. We can change that by building the WAP, by putting people's minds into the space, by putting people's minds into fusion and nuclear fission. We can change that, but it's part of a lost generation who are just, they're horrible people. They don't care about anybody.
Right. So how would you propose to fix it?
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'll tell you what I would do, because I'm trying to get a discussion going in the LaRouche organization on this very question. And trying. I would abolish cryptocurrency. I would abolish derivatives. I wouldn't regulate them either lightly or heavily. Not regulation. Abolish. There are certain things that you could say you need, say, for instance, forward and future contracts for, like farmers. If you farm in plant in April and March, you try and lock yourself into a price that would be paid for your bushel of wheat in September. And so that's what they were used for. If we had parity pricing, you probably wouldn't even need that. You could do without it. And look at it this way. They have no legitimate function in the increase of anti-entropic growth. And if they don't have a function in the increase of anti-entropic growth, they don't have a function. So I would say, and I don't want to speak for everyone, and we should have a discussion on these processes, abolish them. Just say, look, they had to change the gambling laws in Germany to legalize derivatives. They were outlawed in Germany for many years. We didn't have much of derivatives in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. But we had the space program. We had the building of all sorts of things. We started building nuclear power like crazy. That was in the 70s and 80s. Did we need them?
Well, I think that if the dollar had more value, that is, the purchasing power of the dollar was worth what it was, say, in the late 1960s when we had the space program going and other things, people wouldn't be so enamored of it. And I've been reflecting on this whole question of the gambling society. We've become a society of gamblers, and I think it's a function of the insanity of the economy, because we have an economy where the people who work very hard, like home health aides, people in group homes, people who are drivers, people doing all this labor, because we don't have an advanced economy anymore, frankly, get paid nothing. And then people who figure out how to steal or cheat or get lucky, win the lottery, are rich. So it's all very mystical. There's not a connection between how hard you're willing to work and your ability to become prosperous. And so then it becomes mystical. You want to buy lottery tickets, you want to gamble online, you want to speculate, because there is no relationship. There's no intelligible process for how you better your circumstance, right? It used to be the idea that you could work your way up in a company. There was an intelligible way where your standard of living had a relationship to your commitment to better yourself and to work hard. That doesn't.
I think you've got it. I definitely think you've got it. And it is a change in the mission of a nation. And I think, look, we talk about the Oasis plan, but if you give a mission to people in Southeast Asia and extending, Central Asia and so forth, and also to Africa, and you get enemies to reconcile and give Israelis this mission. Israel has 30% poverty. It's just not reported. I was just reading an article on that. It's why I think Helga Zepp LaRouche constantly says to people, you have to put together a development and security architecture which reconceptualizes everything that would allow humans to be human and human beings. If you do that, you can change how people turn out from a very, very early age. If you surround them with music, a good music, real classical music, if you surround them with science problems that are posed and not the ridiculous education system, if you eliminate the drugs by shutting down this operation I'm just described, you make a change. I know we can't snap our fingers to do that, but if we were to bankrupt through Glass-Steagall this system that we have and wiping out literally trillions, tens of trillions, dozens of trillions of fictitious value and put work back into the work that people had to do and said, well, if you want to work, we do have a tremendous number of things to do. We're going to need about 100,000 construction workers to build the North American Water Power Alliance, and we're going to create 5 million jobs from that. Would you like to build a high-speed railroad and also a railroad to Alaska paralleling Nawapa, which will go across the Bering Straits? Would you like to do these things? Would you like to become an engineer like Jose Vega is always talking about? Take the youth. They could apprentice on the North American Water Power Lines. We give them the actual jobs. We have to win the society to that. But I totally agree with you. It is your sense of mission and also the sense of work that you allow people to do so that when they come home, they can say that I've done something and feel that they're going to go back tomorrow and do something. I had a contact for a long time who worked in Connecticut. He was at Pratt Whitney, and he was an engineer. And he told me what he used to do when he was off is go back to the company. And he was very interested in using high-powered water sprays as a metal shaping device, like we would use lasers. And he got permission, and he would go back and do that on his spare time. And look how Americans, I mean, isn't that his mind? Once your mind starts wanting to do those, it becomes a sweetness. The other thing was many American men grew up. What would they do on Saturday? I'm not saying they shouldn't have been doing housework as well, but they would go to their cars. They would do things. They would take things apart. They would do workshops. They would build chairs. They would build tables. They were fascinated by this. And we have a way of setting up science centers where children can. But let me just say, it's not in the realm of wish. We have enough projects that we could define that will create 15 to 20 million productive jobs. And we've got to convince, well, not good convince, we need to lead people through their own reason to see that that's a far better life for them than drugs, homelessness, which they don't necessarily choose, and getting rich. The problem is so many people can get rich so quickly on this stuff. But, I think we can set that up. And I think this system will collapse. And the question is whether someone like Friedrich Merz will be able to take that collapse and then turn it into a Shaktian economy. And the same thing could be done here. The same Shaktian thing could be done here, because we know that while I think many things are not decided on Trump, and people are impatient to say he's this or he's that. You can't. He's not this or that. But you can shape what he does. But if some of the people he's put in as finance people, Treasury Secretary and so forth, have their way, we could end up with a Shaktian situation.
Well, this has been quite a bit, so we should wrap up. I just wanted to ask if you have any concluding thoughts or anything you'd like to leave with people.
Well, don't be Finks. Be smart. Don't be a Larry Fink or Larry the Fink. Figure out, I know sometimes I've got responses from people. It all looks so big and terrible. And so what you've said just convinced me further that I should hide in the closet for a week. That's not the reason we do these presentations. It's to inspire you that this evil cannot last. There's nothing there. It's paper upon paper upon paper. And while you can loot people, and there are people being looted in our country, look at the homeless, for years, the system lawfully will fall apart. And our reason for therefore bringing out these exposés is not to increase pessimism, but it's to fortify optimism, that we can see what the problem is, and we can get people to look at it honestly and make a choice for something that's higher, that's for the future of mankind.
Thank you. I am actually becoming somewhat optimistic with some of these developments. I think it's very hopeful, but we have a lot of work to do, and we do have to, I think, create the conditions where Americans can reflect on some of the wrong ideas that have become prevalent. How did we get here? Why did we give up thinking this way? Why did we become a society of gamblers as opposed to producers? Right? And what joy there is in transforming nature. Isn't that, I mean, you transform the world and it makes you happy. And that's what we have to be in a position to do. And every child being born on the planet should have the opportunity to make those kind of changes. So I'd like to thank you very much for being with us. I would urge everyone listening to, you
One
want to say
thought
something?
you just inspired, just yes, what you encouraged me is that, and this was also the thought I had when listening to Naledi Pandor, because it was so inspiring, her discussion with Helga, how we're going to solve the world. But the thing is, yes, what children will learn is that because we are part of this nature, and the highest part, mankind is the most beautiful part, nature will respond if we do something rational. And that is a wonderful thing for children to play with. I'm sorry, but it just made me
Okay,
think of that.
that's okay. So I'd encourage everyone, please sign up on the LaRoucheOrganization.com or thelarouche.org. Donate. If you do a monthly recurring donation, you get the news service, which Rich Freeman's articles will be appearing in. Anything of $10 or more per month allows you to get that. And stay tuned because things are moving very fast. We can't sit on the sidelines. Oh, and congratulations, everyone who joined us in the mobilization. Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, I guess we still have to get there. Robert Kennedy Jr. is in. We have some people who are willing to take on some of these really entrenched criminal secret apparatus apparatchiks, if you want to put it that way. So let us keep fighting because there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see everyone next week. And who knows what will have happened by then.